wanted maybe to make just two little notes to John's wonderful talk, because in this episode with the publisher going to the Ministry of Information, he had to go because it was wartime. At that time they had to check everything. It was actually, it's because I did research for our publication in Russian where this article was published. I know that the man who is not named in the article was actually Jonathan Cape of the publishing house who exists even today. But what's even more interesting, that as Professor Davison, who published Orwell's works, thinks, the man, the official in the Ministry of Information, was a certain Peter Smollett, whose real name was not Smollett but Smolka, and he was a friend of Kim Philby. So the infiltration of the Soviet agents in the Ministry of Information of Britain was, of course, absolutely remarkable. And the second thing that I wanted to say, that there was something Orwellian about this prohibition of Grossman's life and fate, because the people who came to search his house and to take the manuscript away, of course, remember, there were no computers. They did not only take the manuscript themselves, but also the carbon copies, because it was all done on typewriters. So they did not want a single trace of the book to remain. And of course it was wonderful that Grossman had probably suspected that this possibility might happen, and he had given the manuscript to his friend, who later on helped to smuggle it out. But the idea that...
Sorry, do you know who that was?
Yes. The man who kept the manuscript was Grossman's friend, poet Semyon Livkin. And the man who smuggled it out was a satirical writer, Vladimir Vainovich. Yeah, so it was all connected. But it's incredible to think that these people thought that they could annihilate completely what the writer wrote. And what I liked very much, I mean, the freedom of the press is one of my favorite articles of Orwell, and I was so glad to hear John quote it a lot. But my favorite bit from there, from the same article, is as follows. For all I know, by the time my book is published, my view of the Soviet regime may be the generally accepted one. But what use would that be of itself? To exchange one orthodoxy for another is not necessarily an advance. The enemy is the gramophone mind, whether or not one agrees with the record that is being played at the moment. And I just think that basically why I think we always have to remember Orwell, because all of us, both in Russia and in Britain, tend to have this sort of gramophone mind, just basically to share into the prevailing orthodoxies of the time. And that's why, living in this country for nearly 20 years now, I very often am really upset by the cliches that are published and generally shared by lots of people about Russia. For example, I'll just give some of the cliches, and we can discuss them later on, about the present, about Russia today, about its present state. Oh, let's not criticize Russia because that's we are reverting to Cold War rhetoric. Or there is no ideological conflict today between us and Russia because we all have capitalism. Or we can't really criticize torture in Chechnya because think of Guantanamo. And I'm sure all these words said very often by British intelligentsia, they spring out of best intentions. And I can very well understand that people are dismayed about Guantanamo. But of course they very often do not quite estimate A, the difference in scale, and B, the fact that no matter how appalling Guantanamo is, it still happens against the background of society that is based on the rule of law. as opposed to lawlessness that reigns in Russia, especially recently in the legal sphere. And the same with capitalism. I mean, it's a well-known fact that people who wanted to be independent capitalists like Khodorkovsky, they are in prison. People who, the oligarchs, who seem to be sort of representatives of the capitalist class, like Deripaska, are known for saying that if Putin tells me I'll give up all my riches. Today, what is lots of things that are written about Russia, they are more subtle than the crude Soviet time propaganda. But still, I just think it is very important to really try and understand more deeply what actually is happening there. Because, as Orwell said about the society in the Soviet Union after the revolution, that the transformation had happened. The very similar transformation had happened after 1989, 1991, when everybody, both sides of the Iron Curtain, were full of hope. Unfortunately, it is probably another failed revolution, as described in the Animal Farm, and or failed change. And to help Russia and to help people of Russia, I think people in the West should acknowledge it, because it does not do harm to the people of Russia, as I'm sure some people today feel they might, by criticizing it. Because it does not really criticize the people of Russia, as you wouldn't criticize animals in the Animal Farm. I mean, you would probably for their extreme trustfulness. But it is much more complicated social and political processes that have been taking place in Russia. And I just think that people in the West, and in Britain in particular, should try and see what they are about. So I don't know what you...
No, well, we should have, I think, an open discussion. Thanks very much.